And, the machine does have qualities. They're not designed to be totally perfectly natural sounding. They're designed to sound good.
Welcome, everybody, back to another episode at Liness Studio. We're going to be diving into the sonic universe of Dave Henszey at Henszey Sound. And, he's always been somebody that's had a foot in the analog past, but always another foot going into the future. So let's start our interview.
From mixing rock legends to designing immersive soundscape, this is the conversation that you don't want to miss if you are a music enthusiast that love behind-the-scene music production.
Dave, thanks for having us in the studio with you. You've worked with artists from Destiny's Child to Brian McKnight on Letterman. But first, tell us what pulled you into audio initially?
When I was a kid and playing in bands and everything, I couldn't get my head right until I went around to everybody's amp and tweaked it and get the sound right, so I can do that. And then my brother started mixing sound for groups that play in the bars in Milwaukee and around the Midwest area. And so I started following him around, and then I eventually started sneaking out of the house at night because I was still in high school. And it was a big competition then. Everybody had very powerful systems, and they expected it to be cranked. And so it was a lot of fun, too. And it was just something that came natural, I guess.
So you were following bands around and basically being their sound guy, and you started all in the live situation. When did you start getting into more of a studio recording atmosphere?
Well, I went to took some classes at CalArts when I got out of high school, and when I got back, I got a job at a place that had both a live system that they leased out, and they had a brand new big giant MCI mixing console with a 24-track machine. Mm-hmm. And I'd work in the studio in the day and go out and mix bands in whatever places they were playing at night. And that's kind of where it started.
You remember the first song you ever mixed?
No.
Too many over the years.
They were sort of, most of them were pretty hard rock bands, And then after that, I ended up working for a guy named Dave Kennedy. And he really showed me how to record stuff. And that was primarily orchestra and 18-piece big band.
Wow.
And so Dave had the first multi-track studio in the United States. In 1942, we took delivery of the first Ampex 4-track. And Les Paul was one of his clients. And then he got a 2-inch 16-track. That's the one we used most of the time. And he also, before that, he had Ampex serial number 1-inch 8-track Ampex machine. So he really knew his stuff. And he had these incredibly expensive microphones that we'd put around like a drum set or something that people nowadays, they'd look at that and go, you can't do that. But he was a great guy. And he had a accredited basic engineering course. And I got into that after a while. But he knew how to record instruments. And I learned a lot from him about how it actually works, rather than just the band with the guitar, bass, and the drums,
Is there anything you miss about the tape days? Well, not the editing?
I've always liked the majesty of a finely built machine. It's the equipment, all the gear was made in a very majestic quality construction. And, the machine does have qualities. They're not designed to be totally perfectly natural sounding. They're designed to sound good. And they, have been working on those tape formulas for years. Mm-hmm. And so it's always nice when you can combine both.
So you get that character, that feeling.
The way I like to look at it, if you have to recall a mix and it's all analog gear, it's never really going to come back exactly the same. And it's also going to take a day. Somebody can't call up and say, hey, can you turn the guitar solo up a little bit? And then you get it back in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But there are important things about the sounds and the tones that you're trying to get. And a lot of that is, a lot of the stuff I do is transferred from analog tapes. And so that has a sound that you can only get by using that.
Yeah,
So,
I see a lot of the emulation, modeling, those kind of plugins. They can get, I feel they get 90% there, but it's that 10% that really, to a trained ear, I hear the difference.
To me, they might work, but I never go at anything knowing what I'm going to hear before I actually hear it. So sometimes those stupid analog simulating plugins do something that's kind of hashy and not good, but it's like, but I like it.
Kind of an unexpected thing that just...
Yeah, but whatever it is, if you're using the analog stuff, the thing you want to do is make sure you preserve it. So you get your full text and everybody in the analog machine going, and you stack up a couple of different processors, a little Helio CQ or something, and then you put it down to the box. And you got it. It's preserved. It's not going to change. You don't have to try to figure out how to get it again. And, so that's the way I look at it. But, I have a lot of cases where we're doing like some, sort of vampire from the belly of Hollywood stuff where they don't want it to sound good in certain parts. Right. Because it's an expression of a certain variety.
Like they want it to sound really raw in a particular section or jarring, and that they're going for that reaction.
Yeah, and just it might be just for one little moment. The rest of it might be as clear as an angel.
So Dave, what made you open the first studio back in the day, and how did it feel to land on the cover of the Mix magazine in 1989?
I was with a friend of mine, and we decided we were going to make a studio. I had worked in a couple of other studios by then.
Okay.
And I was out working with bands still and on the live thing. And we just thought we'd go for it. And we were looking at a much smaller scale. But we wanted it in a commercial place.
Okay.
And so we started going, and we were looking at the Sony MCI console, and we talked to those people. And then we decided, well, let's just talk to Solid State Logic, very fancy poo-poo console. Mm-hmm. And to make a long story short, we ended up getting an agreement with them. And then apparently there must be spies, because Phil Wagner from Neve, which is a much more expensive console than the SSL, he called me up and he said, I heard you got approval from SSL to get a board. And I said, well, yeah. And he goes, you ever considered a Neve? And I was like, I've considered buying a Rolls Royce, but that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse.
Jumbo jet.
And at that time, Siemens Corporation, they had a guy who went around to all their companies and kicked butt to get them going.
Yeah.
And the guy happened to be, his present task was Neve. Mm-hmm. So they said, well, here's what we can do. We can do a turnkey lease. So that's all the outboard gear, mm-hmm. the wiring, everything. Nice. Turnkey.
Turnkey.
And so here we went from trying to get a little place going with the little MCI console. Now all of a sudden we have a turnkey lease with a Neve and some Mitsubishi. This is in the mid '80s. Those Mitsubishi 32 tracks are $200,000 a piece.
Right.
And it was, but the record budgets were very big back then. And all of a sudden it's like, oh boy, well, I guess here we are. And then we got the best studio designer from Nashville, Stephen Durr. And I guess I was a little overambitious on the size of the room. And so he said, you know, if you have a 38 by 36 foot control room, that'll be big enough. I promise you, David, you know, and which is huge, you know, and the window was 30 feet wide, you know.
So were you thinking of like a Vox factory, you know, where they had the Sound City, that kind of space? Was that originally what you're thinking? That kind of big, their live room, basically?
Good sized room. The studio was triangular. It was 65-foot accesses. And
So like for the whole orchestra that you
and it was big enough, barely big enough for a whole orchestra. And it was, you know, up high in a high rise with windows looking out over the city. It was spectacular at night. Wow. And so, you know, we ended up getting some good projects in there. I got an agreement with Narada, a new age label. I said, if we build a studio like this, will you commit a certain number of albums? They said, yeah. So it was like 5 albums a year or something. And then I went to Jerry Harrison from the Talking Heads, and I heard he was making an album. And I said, I'll make you a deal. If you commit to doing your album at our studio, I'll let you choose the outboard gear. And he said, okay. And that's really what got the place. That was the thing where we got the lease. Because I had clients on paper already. And that was a 7-month-long project. Of course, Jerry promptly spent like $390,000 on outboard gear. And, but it was a great time. And of course, it was a great learning experience. He had people from all over the world coming in there. And then we ended up having Cheap Trick in there, you know, for the beginnings of the Busted album. And the Bodines were in there. And you know, so we ended up with a pretty decent clientele. And after the end of the 5 years, it's time to renew the lease. And the building really didn't know what they were in for when we came in there. There's all these rock and roll bands in this building that's filled with pricey law firms.
Yeah.
And with their staff peeking around the corner to see who's in the place. And they said, you know, if you move your studio, because somebody wants this whole half a floor, we'll forget about that $300-something thousand balloon on your lease. And my little brother said, well, you know, or the equipment's pretty new. We could sell it and it's still worth a lot of money and I could give you a big chunk of that because we paid it off. And you can go to California because you got some clients out there now. And for me, that was about the easiest decision I've ever made in my entire lifetime.
Pretty much laid out, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how does it feel that you, when you land on the cover of Mix magazine?
And you know, that happened there, and it was surprising to me. I knew we had a beautiful room. But to tell you the truth, I really didn't understand how good it was because I hadn't been around all the other studios to compare. I found out later, it was like, boy, we were crazy. That room was just huge. It was amazing.
How many?
I don't think I've ever seen another room like it. And so I wasn't really, I hadn't gotten around enough to even know that. But there they were. And it was just like, you know, it was just really surprising how the thing started out. We weren't really looking big.
And it just blew up real quick.
And, you know, other people in the industry get in there. And it's like, I heard you got this company. And then the other guy comes in and, wait a minute, you know. And, we worked very hard, but a certain amount of it was, we got kind of lucky on a few things. But, you know, engineering, as far as that goes, it's the only thing I've ever done. You know, I'm pretty sure I was put on earth to, like, do what I do, you know.
So very, very young, yeah. I feel like at about 16, I knew I wanted to do music. I was already decided halfway through high school.
Halfway through high school?
Just about. Second year, yeah. So you've always kept 1 foot digital and 1 foot analog. How has your mindset changed as the tech evolves?